Hey Jeff, welcome. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's been a while since we spoke. Nice to reconnect.
It is. It is. Thank you for joining. It's an honor, and we had some good time, right?
We've had a bunch of good times. Yes.
Yeah. Let's start with talking about business and software because one of the problems that I face with you is that it's not always easy to write software. I mean, there are a lot of problems. So let me take it back. What are the biggest challenges for you, according to your opinion, in designing and building software nowadays?
What I discovered is that universities around the world are producing a huge number of very talented, very knowledgeable software engineers. But if they're not given the right guidance, sometimes they end up solving the right problem. So my belief is that today, one of the biggest challenges is actually understanding what are the problems the customer is facing. And the customer, by the way, can be an internal customer for an internal IT department, or it could be external. But it's too easy to leave them out of the loop, and then you end up writing code, brilliant code, to solve the wrong problem. So I think more and more importantly, uh, it's really critical to get good, thorough customer requirements to understand what problem they have. And by the way, sometimes the problem they have is not the problem they think they have, because they don't know how to do their own needs
Let's
analysis.
talk about that though, because in small companies, I have seen that, right? They imagine they think they have a problem. And sometimes it's not even their fault because they don't have enough time to formalize or to analyze all the product level, requirements of problems. So in a world, in a sea where where the waters are always shaking you and the wind changes direction, and you are a very small company, how can you navigate that? Produce requirements. What's the right balance of energy and resources in order to do that?
See, what you just said about the water being choppy and and everything, this is a really common problem for the startups, in that every startup has too many things to do, not just writing code, but making payroll and getting taxes paid and showing up for the right conferences and things like that. There's so many things to do, it's hard to prioritize. And I actually think one of the greatest challenges for a small business is time management and prioritization. And if you don't have time, and if you don't make time to dedicate to gathering customer requirements, you're guessing about the customer needs as much as they are. And it's really a priority to force yourself and your customer to set aside time to explore the real root cause of the problem that needs to be solved. If we don't get down to the root cause, we're not fixing anything. We're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
So we're talking about product here, right? Product development and requirements gathering. Now,
Well, let me clarify that.
yeah,
The word product sometimes means something we're going to sell to others, but in fact, even in a small or mid-sized business, the IT department may make a product for internal use. They may make something for the sales or marketing people to be
yeah.
more efficient, or they may make a product that manufacturing may use to control things. So even though it's not sold to an outside entity, it is still a product with customers. Um, and whether they're internal or external, if we don't understand their situation, and the key word here is empathy, the programmer has to understand the challenges that they face from their perspective.
You're
When
asking.
you start to understand it from their perspective, then you can solve their problem.
Sorry, my smiling, but you are requiring empathy from software developers. Are you sure about that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, that
But
might be
if
a
they're
little
going to
bit.
solve a problem for some stakeholder group, they have to understand what the problem is. And the stakeholder group does not know how to do requirements analysis themselves. So you're trying to lead people, customers, through a process with which they are unfamiliar. So the programmer has to help them understand their own problem. I find in many of the projects I work on, the most important thing is discussing their challenges. And when we go down to root cause analysis, they have this problem. Why? Because of this situation. Why does that situation exist? Because of this other situation. There's a concept called the 5 whys. Why does this happen because of that? Why does that happen because of this? And eventually, we get down to the root cause, and that's what needs to be fixed. The customers have no notion that that should be done. They don't know how to do it. The engineers do. The engineers are generally better at understanding that, but they have to take the time to view it all from the perspective of the customer. Because we're not solving a technical problem, we're solving a business problem.
You remind me of a book I read in my youth. I mean, it might probably be 30 years ago. Object-oriented analysis, Peter Code and Jordan, something.
Oh, Jordan, yeah.
Do you know this?
I have a Jordan book somewhere on my shelf also, because he's been writing this stuff for decades.
Yeah. And, for a young mind like mine, it was probably mid-90s, so object-oriented was. But a lot of what they say does also apply to generally. It was about what you were saying. Understand the problem, learn the terminology, because if they have special terms, special words to define objects or actions, they mean, you need to learn, they mean something, they need to be in the analysis. But let me ask you something, actually, or maybe, so first, in my experience, at least in large companies, people that study these, they come from the product group, right? They are not engineers that write code. They are people that specializes in I don't know, gathering requirements, asking questions. I don't know, but I want to switch the focus to when your audience is out there, right? You're a startup. You write an app. You are doing enough to solve some alleged problem. What tools do you have in your toolbox? Other than, or maybe starting from, Google Ads, this kind of advertising tools that let you study a bit your audience. There are other marketing tools, but what would you advise? What would be the ideal toolbox for this kind of startups, in your opinion?
It's really old school. The most important thing is to talk to your customer. Understand what they're going through. Understand what makes them less efficient and less effective than they want to be.
I'm glad you say that. And you know why? A couple of weeks ago, I had my podcast, and I invite you to watch that video. AJ Brow, a very young lady from Utah, she has a company, Wonder App, where she has actually, so her app has two faces, B2C and B2B. Right now, they only have B2A. So if you have a park or if you are a city or a state and you want to organize your data in a nice app, your point of interest, your services, and always be up to date, you can, pay her a small fee and she will do that for you. And now she's moving to B2C, where she wants to do something like that for consumers, where if you are on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and you see, I see that Jeff posted a picture or something about a place, he's been on vacation, and I want to remember that, so that when I plan my vacation later on, I can recollect all these places. Anyway, when she was 22, she started to do this app, right? And she needed customer feedback, and she didn't have any money for marketing, at least. And so, you know what she did? She strapped the camera on her chest. She went to the local airport with a reimbursable, refundable ticket, and she started talking to people, letting them prove her app, and looking in their face, in their eyes, when they had a ha-ha moment, when they couldn't do something, she would ask questions like, would you pay for this app? I mean, she was not ready to receive payments, but just to know. And she gathered a lot of feedback in those, I think, 6 hours, and it's wonderful. I think it's an example of common sense marketing. Can I call it common sense marketing, Jeff? Without spending thousands of dollars
brilliant. Because what happens is we end up with too many layers between the developers and the customers. And if they're not talking to each other, how can the developers solve the customer problems? There was years ago, I had come up with a product idea working for a company. I don't need to mention which company it was. I came up with a product idea, and the engineers didn't understand it and didn't like it and wouldn't build it for me. So I ran some focus groups, and I invited the engineers to join me behind the mirror so they could observe customer reactions to a description of the product I had envisioned. And a very large company had somebody there who said, wow, I get this. I'd like 50 of these things right now. And these were products that were going to be selling for tens of thousands of dollars each. And so when the engineer finally saw, the head of engineering finally saw that customers liked this idea, they were on board. But I had to get rid of all the intermediaries and let the engineer directly hear from the customer. And then he got excited because you know what? Even engineers who we may think of as nerdy, but they're not necessarily, they still want to make something that's actually going to be used and appreciated. And when they saw the customers describe how important this new product was going to be, the engineers got excited.
Brilliant. And so did they actually was this a hardware product, a physical product, or something?
It was a huge hardware product. It was about 6 feet tall and about 3 feet wide, about well over 100 pounds, a couple hundred pounds. And out of respect for the company, I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but it required hardware, software, firmware. We ended up actually using components from 5 different partners to make this product. So it was a huge integration project, but ultimately it solved problems that customers all around the world were experiencing.
Well, you are in California. It's almost 2029. I bet you. What did you build? A Terminator machine?
I can't talk about it.
No, I know.
I've got to protect them. But it was a. I guess I can tell you a little bit. It was, and this is back in the 90s. I did this.
Oh.
It was a multi-room conferencing system where we could have people in conference rooms all over the world, and they could actually do video conferencing and application sharing and document sharing and shared whiteboarding. Now today that's commonplace, but this was the 1900s. It didn't exist, and we envisioned the need for having multi-point distributed conferencing and built it.
Brilliant. Wow. Congratulations. So you were an employee at the time, or you were freelancing or
I
consulting?
was an employee of a very large corporation at the time.
Well, let's fast forward to the future. So you help small, medium companies nowadays. You help my company, mine, the company I work for, and to try to sell in-memory database a little bit more. So what else do you do? How much of that we can classify as business, marketing, software development? Give us an overview.
So I've been a fairly successful startup CEO. And as the startup you have to be aware. You have to be aware of everything that's going on. You have to talk to the engineers using engineering language. You have to talk to the customers using customer language. You have to talk to your accounting department using accounting language. You almost become a debabbilizer. You have to speak the different languages of every stakeholder group and make sure you've got alignment. Do you have budgeting to create the product that is needed by the customers? And by the way, it may not just be the customers, because while most entrepreneurs think they're going to create a product, open up a website, and sell direct to the customers, in many cases, direct sales is not the best way of doing sales. You want to go through some kind of intermediary. If it's a physical product, maybe you have to sell it through Amazon, or maybe you want to get on the shelves at Walmart or Costco, right? So
Sell it directly to customer. I mean, if we're talking about software, is it always the case that it's okay to sell directly to the customers, or not?
it's okay, but it may not be optimal, right? So setting up a website and doing e-commerce transactions, setting up a SaaS thing, right? The customer comes in, they create an account, and every month you take $10 from them or $10,000 for them or whatever. That's easy from a technical point of view, but it may not be what the customer needs. If the customer is comfortable getting their software from a vendor or an integrator, you have to work through that integrator if you want access to the customer's decision makers. So you can't force, or you shouldn't try to force the customer to do business the way you want. You should do business the way the customer wants, right? The customer's always right. And so maybe the customer has hired one of the big consulting companies to manage their strategic IT directions. You have to go through them. You can't go around them because they're going to block it, because what you're doing may interfere with everything else that's part of the strategic IT initiative that the customer has worked out with this consultancy. So you have to use the channel that the customer prefers. And if the customer prefers to buy your software on the shelf at Costco, then that's where you should sell it. If they want to get the software through recommendations by something like Accenture, then you need to have a partnership with Accenture.
Interesting. So if I do some kind of software or software service that I sell,
Yes?
I should investigate the market before and see how many of my possible clients, my prospects, how many of them purchase the software by themselves, how many have a company, as you said, that manages IT. So is that kind of information available out there? I mean, how can I do some market research on this?
Just like we talked about earlier, you talk to them. you ask them. Yeah. You go to a conference and you talk to them, or you call people up. There's this wonderful book called, I hope I get the name right. I think it's called Talking to People.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how to do market research. It's about a startup that had invented a way of creating artificial goose down, right? The feathers that a goose have that are very soft. And there's a lot of people who are allergic. Goose down is used in pillows to make them nice and fluffy. But there are a lot of people who are allergic to it, and so they needed artificial down. And this company had invented a way to do artificial down and wanted to sell pillows that were non-allergenic. You know what they did? They actually went and they hung out in, I think it was Bed Bath & Beyond, and they waited for people to come in and shop for pillows. And they observed, they just watched people shopping for pillows. And then they talked to them. and they learned what the customers wanted, and then they were able to productize their artificial down to meet the needs of the actual customers, not to meet the needs that the engineers or the chemists had guessed about. And all it took was going to the store and talking to people.
It feels weird when a concept like go out and talk to people and ask what they need feels so revolutionary. It means we probably we are a lot off track, right? It feels like when I have my teenager daughters and they need to communicate something to some of their friends and they type a message, and maybe we need to know that, right in that moment. And I told them, call them. You have a telephone, they have a telephone, call them, right? Oh no, it's okay, we sent the message. Come on. So, anyway, wow. So, and this is what you do. You advise startups mainly, or?
Mostly startups, but last year I was hired by a huge multi-billion-dollar company that had an idea for a product, and it was a software product, by the way. It was an AI system that could analyze lots of data, and I can't go into the specifics because it's proprietary, but it could analyze data and make recommendations about how to change operations and improve efficiency for large organizations.
Jeff, we've talked a lot about business and marketing and product, but if I remember correctly, you started your career as an engineer. So, what happened along the way?
Well, yeah, in fact, I have 2 degrees in software engineering, a bachelor's
Two.
degree from Rutgers. You can see my red R right here on the bookshelf, and a master's degree in computer science. So I had, 6, 7 years of education in software engineering, and I went out and I started being a software engineer, and that lasted for 3 years. And I was working for a really big company, McDonnell Douglas. You remember, used to be one of the largest airplane manufacturers in the world until they were acquired by Boeing. But I was working for McDonnell Douglas, and one day they noticed I was one of those few engineers that actually could talk to customers. And at that point, they said, you're not programming anymore. You're going out and dealing with customers because you have the ability to understand the technology and to communicate with them. And so I was transitioned into a sales engineer, and then into product management, and then into brand management. And over a period of about 10 years, I worked my way up with increasing levels of responsibility in sales and marketing. But the irony is I have 7 years of software engineering education and only 3 years of actually being a software engineer. But the education is very valuable because to this day, I still know how to talk to the engineers. I know how to explain customer requirements to them. I know what excites them. I also know when they're giving me a little bit of BS. Sometimes the software engineer says, I tell them what I want, or the customer wants the software to do, and the engineer will say, no, that's not possible. And I can call them on that because really what they're saying is, I don't want to do that, or I don't believe that's the right thing. And one time I had actually a CTO of a startup who told me that wasn't possible. And I told him how to do it using very technical architectural terminology. And his jaw dropped and he said, wait a minute, you're a marketing guy. You don't understand that kind of stuff. I said, well, this marketing guy has 2 degrees in software engineering. And from that day forward, we had a really strong relationship because he understood I actually did have both technical and business competency. And I was a way to bridge the gap between the technical capabilities of our customers, between the technical capabilities of our engineering and the business needs of our customers. And when you bridge that gap, that's how you end up producing really valuable solutions. Because at the end of the day, the software is created to solve a problem. And if you don't do that, you don't have a business. You may have really cool software, but you don't have a business because nobody's going to buy it if you don't solve their problem.
I have to tell you, you are one among a few people that helped killing my dream of creating a business. Because when I talk to you and with other bunch of people, I realize how little I know, and it's not just a matter of knowledge; it's a matter of I don't know, having that feeling with the market, with the people, with understanding what to do, when to do, the right balance of all that we were saying earlier, right? You are a startup, you don't have enough time to do anything. You need to prioritize, and if you prioritize a little bit, wrong, you make a disaster. So, and anyway, so from a person like you, I was going to ask you how you find your customers, right? The companies that you consult for. So I would expect an answer like word of mouth. Probably you don't go out on Google Ads and put thousands of dollars on advertising yourself, right?
No, I do no advertising. It's
Okay.
word of mouth. One customer talks to another customer, or somebody used to work for my customer and they changed jobs and they asked me to help with their new company.
That's so easy, huh?
Yeah, it's word of mouth. I don't do any advertising.
So how long has it been that you are a consultant, freelancer? How do you call yourself?
A consultant. I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 years ago. So I was actually started my own very successful software company.
Oh, let's talk about
And
that. That's an important part of the story.
so I started a company and built it into a fairly successful global software company.
To
I ran
solve
it for over 8 years.
to solve which problem?
So if you think about some of the movies that talk about space travel or something,
Oh, I
you
love
always
them.
see they have a control center with this giant video wall that has all this different kind of
Yeah,
information on it.
yeah.
And those systems have very complex, very expensive, specialized hardware behind them that coordinates what information is being displayed on each part of that, because those are actually built by taking many displays and putting them next to each other. And then you have to take those physical displays and virtualize them into one huge virtual display system. So we had software to do that. It was actually developed as a research project, and I licensed it from the university and ran the company for 8.5 years. And by the end of that time, we had customers in 60 countries. And even though I do have my software engineering background, I was not involved in the development of the code at all. In fact, it was a PhD thesis for one of my co-founders of the company, but I'm the one who took his brilliant software and used it as the basis for a very successful company. So the gap between the technical expertise of the development department and the needs of the customers, that's where I came in, is how do we get this technology to solve their problems? And by the way, what are those problems we've got to solve? So I grew it over 8 years to have customers in 60 countries. I retired. And interestingly enough, I got bored. So
Ah,
I unretired with a mission of helping other people have successful entrepreneurial journeys. And I do that two ways. Number one, through my consulting practice, where I have mostly entrepreneurs from all over the world come to me to help with the commercialization of their technology. They create great software, but they don't know how to bring it to market. They don't know exactly what customers need. They don't know how to talk to customers. So I do that, but I also teach these topics at the University of California at Irvine, at Cal State Fullerton, and at Irvine Valley College. So this is my way of giving back. The world has given me a path to allow me to be successful in taking technologies and using them to actually solve problems and provide value to customers by solving the problems they have. And so now I'm thanking the world by giving back, helping other entrepreneurs and helping my students learn how to do the same so they can have successful entrepreneurial journeys also.
Well, first of all, thank you, sir, for giving back. We, as collective, entrepreneurs and tentative entrepreneurs, we appreciate. I would like to go back to the startup because, for you, I created a company with co-founder, I took a software, I improved, customer in 60 countries, and boom. Can we tell the story a little bit from, at least from the idea, from the moment that you thought, maybe this can be a product and a company. I suppose there was prototype, some funding, the first office, first employee, first customer, first $1 million of revenue, something like that. Which were the first?
So, it's very easy for us to drift away from organizations that are very important. So I have a master's degree in computer science from the University of California at Irvine. I don't have an I only have an R, but someplace I probably have I think someplace here I have yes, right here, I have an anteater pin from the University of California, Irvine. Our mascot is Peter the Anteater. Okay. So I had drifted away. I only lived 5 miles from campus, but I was not involved. And every year, a couple times a year, they would send me this really nice magazine about what was happening. And like most people, I would throw it away. And one time it came, and I had a little bit of spare time, so I opened it up and I read it, and I realized that when I was there, it was only a department, and it had actually of about 15 faculty members. It had now grown to be not just a department, but an entire school of computer science with about 60 faculty. And it was ranked one of the top 20 or 25 programs in the country. And I thought to myself, Jeff, you're an idiot. You live 5 miles from campus, one of the best computer science programs in the country, with whom you have a formal relationship because you are an alumni, and you're not doing anything about it. So I called them up and I said, hey, I'd like to re-engage. What can I do to help? And I thought they were going to ask me to do membership drives or fundraising. But interestingly enough, and this is a lesson for engineers, they looked me up on LinkedIn. And they said, Jeff, you seem to have a lot of experience doing high-tech startups. We have researchers on campus who create really interesting technologies, and we think some of them could be the basis of businesses, but we don't know how to do that. Would you be willing to help? And to me, it was like a trick question. Yes, please, I'd love to help. So I actually started working with them. They introduced me to various research projects. And I actually formed a couple of companies and licensed a couple of different technologies. But the one I just described, it was actually somebody's PhD thesis. And it didn't have a user interface. He just had secret codes. Control F meant do this, and Alt 2 meant do that. So, but I realized it had commercial potential, formed a company, licensed the technology from the university, and brought this student and his faculty advisor on as partners. And the three of us made a company. The two of them wrote code, and I was the CEO, where the E meant everything else. So while they wrote code, I did sales, I did marketing, I did staffing, I did accounting, I Whatever needed to be done, I let them work on the product, and I did everything else. And
How do you
one of the
find?
things I realized, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was asking. I was about how you found. How did you find customers? But
Yeah, that's the key. So what I realized is this software, in order to work,
uh,
it required customers that had lots of displays because we would make those displays behave as if they're one very big, very high resolution display. So I thought, well, who's the largest display company in the world? And the answer is Samsung. So I called Samsung out of the blue and I explained to them what we had. And it turned out at the time, Samsung's US headquarters was only about 3 miles from the UCI campus.
okay. So sorry. I interrupt you. But so what do you mean you contacted Samsung? You just pick up the phone and call the local number. You called. I mean, whom did you talk to? How did you? How did it work?
So I actually just called the switchboard and I asked to talk to somebody in the department. They connected me to somebody, and eventually they sent an engineer over to our lab on the campus. We were still working out of a research lab
Yeah.
on the university campus. They sent somebody over. He looked at it, realized it was a good match to their hardware because anybody who was going to buy their monitors would need our software for certain kinds of installations. In fact, our software would help them sell more monitors. And so he sent a message back to the headquarters. And the next time the VP of the division was in the country, he stopped by us, he saw what it did, and we then negotiated a contract where they would include our software with some of their displays. So that sounds like a small thing, but what was
No,
really as important is
it
it
is big.
allowed their salespeople to sell solutions, not just displays. And it enabled them to sell them in large quantities. So all of a sudden, my tiny little company, which was 5 people, we had a global sales force promoting our products all over the world.
I can't believe it.
And
I
we
can't believe
started
it.
getting sales
This.
in in Kazakhstan. And one day we actually got a tech support call from South Africa. None of us had ever been in South Africa, but in fact, Samsung had sold our system to almost every police department throughout the country. And one of the police departments was having trouble, looked up our phone number and called us. And that's the only reason we knew. But because of this partnership, we inherited Samsung's global sales force and we had revenue coming in from all over the world. So what we learned there is really the importance of partnerships. Uh, Samsung gave us reach that we could never have afforded to do on our own, but we gave them technology that they didn't have. And so each company provided something valuable to the partnership and ended up helping each other. And that literally put us on the map, and our tiny little company became a global operation.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So it's like those small animals that sit on the outside skin of bigger animals, like
Yeah,
rhinos, like whales, and they
yeah,
eat. They do a small, and they do a service to the bigger animal because they clean their skin and they eat
right,
a little bit. They will never become as big as rhinos or whales, but they
right.
they, they will have a. I mean, it's amazing. You
It was, I think, a very positive, not a parasitic relationship, but a symbiotic relationship. We helped them, they helped us, and we became a global operation. Again, we were 5 people sitting in a little lab in Irvine with customers at maybe initially it was only about 40 or 50 countries, but there's no way a company that small can do something like that on their own. And we didn't. We did it through the partnership. And then over time, I built some other partnerships and was able to grow the company even bigger and bigger.
Well, it's amazing. Also, on the other hand, you make me feel so stupid, and I don't know how to process that. It's like making it's like a it should be the first slide of any startup deck. Like which kind of partnership can you make to have someone bigger than you sell or advertise your stuff and help
Right.
them
And
in
so
selling more products.
in the world of entrepreneurship, we call that a channel. Actually, in business in
A
general,
what?
right? A channel.
A
What
channel.
is the channel between you and your customer? All right. So if you're a company like Nike, who makes athletic wear, your channel is all the stores all over the world who are going to carry your products, and the customers go there to buy your products because you're not going to sell direct. Now, in fact, in Nike's case, they do have some of their own stores, but there are many products that you can only buy at a grocery store or a convenience store. And it turned out that selling the software direct was not a good strategy for us. Selling it through a channel like Samsung, and actually not just Samsung, but Samsung has a worldwide network of dealers. So we actually sold to Samsung. Samsung would sell to their dealers, and the dealers would sell to the customers. So we ended up with this global network of organizations supporting us and helping get information about us, telling the world, hey, this kind of thing exists, and then actually selling it. So we ended up setting up a world-class channel structure because we built the right partnerships, and then we were able to build on top of that.
Good job, man. Good job. And you skip over this part like it was not important. This is a magnificent example of, oh boy. I mean,
Oh,
it's
but it's not unimportant. In fact, so when we signed the contract, um, one of the things I was able to negotiate, and so the contract said that for every unit Samsung sells, they're going to pay us a royalty on our software. I also got them to agree to prepay some of those royalties. And that cash is how we were able to actually fund the start of the company. So because of that, we never even had to do any venture capital funding.
yeah.
I was able to get enough advanced funding from them that we could run the business. And then the royalties started coming in, and we started creating more and more dealers. And then over time, we actually started creating some dealer relationships on our own that didn't go through Samsung, and built a bigger and bigger global dealer network. And eventually we had people promoting and selling our products all over the world. So it was a huge thing, but it's not the kind of thing that an engineer thinks of. Fortunately for me, from the time I stopped being an engineer to the time I founded this company, I had over 20 years of experience working for other people and learning these techniques. So it's not like I just got lucky or I was brilliant. I went to school. Every company I worked for, and I worked for a bunch of startups, every time I learned a little bit more. I learned what the company did right. I learned what they did wrong. And by the time I founded this company, I had accumulated enough knowledge that I was able to make some smart decisions. But it wasn't a stroke of brilliance by me. It was the accumulation of all the learning I did along the way, which, we talk about, or we hear people talk about the need for lifelong learning. And that's actually what I had done. I had learned it from a bunch of companies, and then I put all those lessons together, and that enabled me to make pretty good decisions and take this little 5-person team global.
Good
And
job, man. Good job.
and
Wow.
you know, somebody who's just out of engineering has never been exposed to those things, so they haven't had a chance to learn it, right? There's theories that you have to do something for 2,000 hours before you could become an expert at it, and you know,
Mm.
I put in 2,000 hours and a lot more,
I
and
heard 10,000, but maybe
10,000, whatever the
it's too
number is.
much.
Different people say different things, right? But I put in way more than 10,000 hours over 20 years. But eventually, I learned from some really smart people, and I was able to apply those lessons to make this a successful company. And now I apply it to help other people make successful companies, whether those are clients of my consulting practice or students of my entrepreneurship classes.
Hmm.
In fact, last night I taught a class, um, which was, interestingly enough, um, telling the entrepreneurs when you think you have an idea for a product, to recognize everything you think you know is just a hypothesis,
Yeah.
and you have to go talk to customers to validate those hypotheses or correct them. And last night's class was about how to do those interviews, how to figure out who to interview, and how to structure the interviews so you're collecting the information that allows you to make better informed decisions about the future of your own business. Because ultimately, the direction of your business has to be driven by the needs of the customers. If you're not solving their problems, you're not going to be successful. And that's what last night's class was about. How to talk to customers, to understand, to learn what do they actually need.
I would be curious to see that lesson because so my wife is a sociologist and so she studied focus groups and all that stuff, right? And I am working. I think I told you earlier about this idea that I will not say it here. I mean,
Right.
it's something light, but. And then my objective was to do a physical prototype of this thing and start with friends, and friends of friends, and see how they react to this product. And my wife is going to advise me on how to do that. And yeah, so interesting. So is that the only startup you did, or the only one that had huge success?
That was the most successful one. I did a couple of others, one that had moderate success and one that was actually went nowhere. So, but if my batting average was 2 out of 3, that's a pretty good batting average. So I'll take it.
Oh, I would say that 1 out of n is a good outcome, right? I mean, if you did one right, it's like, you know what, you did. So interesting. Yeah, sorry, you got my brain spinning, and now I can't stop. This partnership channel is really something. It's really something.
But you don't just do partnerships for channels. So the interesting thing about the Samsung partnership is it was a partnership that gave us channels. It gave us access to customers. But one of the other companies, in fact, when I was working for the big company that I mentioned earlier, where we did this conferencing system, this was in the early days of video conferencing, and we didn't have all the technologies needed to make the entire solution. So I had to form a handful of partnerships with different technology countries in different fields in different countries so we could have all the pieces. And we sort of acted as the master integrator and took all those pieces, combined them, wrote the software to make them interact, and then delivered that to the world, to the market. So in that case, we use partnerships to get access to technology, as opposed to Samsung, where we use partnerships to get access to customers. So it turns out almost anything a small company needs, maybe they invent themselves, or maybe they acquire it through partnerships. And there's a very simple document. It's called a business model canvas. It's a one-page document. And it's a place where you describe what's essential, what you believe is essential to making your idea a successful business. And it has 9 boxes. You fill in the boxes with what's going to be essential. And one of those boxes is channels. And one of those boxes is partnerships. And one of those boxes is knowing who your customers are. And one of them is knowing what they need, what their problems are. And when you fill out these boxes, you start to get clarity as to what you have to do to make the transition from producing a technology to selling a product. And so I often use that approach of creating a business model canvas based on a book I've got right here. So this is the book, if you can see it, called Business Model Generation. And it tells you how to think about what's going to be important to take your idea. There you go. That's the same company. Yes.
The Italian version, but no. I have Business Model Generation.
That was not their first book. What I showed was their first book, and that was one of their follow-on books.
Hold on.
There you go. Okay, you got the book, right? The Strategizer Group. And this book gives you guidance on how to go from idea to business. And a lot of what we've discussed today is really filling in the blanks on this one-page form called the Canvas, which helps you realize what's essential to make the transition from idea to thriving business. Now, there's a lot of execution that has to go on behind the scenes.
Yep.
It's not just a matter of filling in the canvas, the one-page document, but understanding how to take all those little bullet points and make them reality, actually execute. And a lot of that is what I learned on my journey working for all these companies. How do you do execution? And eventually, through partnerships, because partnerships allow a small company to get access to resources they could not afford to have on their own. So to me, that was the value of partnerships. And what we got from our partnership with Samsung was global channels.
Wow.
Access to global markets.
I would love to come to your classes, Jeff, but I might be in the wrong part of the world. Oh boy.
I really enjoy it. The pay, they do pay me something, but it's really small. But the reward I get when the students all of a sudden understand something and they realize what they have to do to be successful with their business. Because we all tend to take very straight lines, come up with an idea, open a website and sell direct. And while that may be easiest, it's rarely the best strategy. And through my experiences, I've learned how to speculate what the right strategy might be, do some research to validate or modify your hypotheses, and then go out and execute. And by the way, even when you've done research to validate your hypotheses, they're never going to be 100% right, but maybe you can bring it from 20% accurate to 40% accurate or 60% accurate. One of the other lessons is to learn to iterate rapidly.
Yeah.
Talk to customers, learn something. Talk to them some more, learn some more. Talk to them some more, learn some more. And the more you talk to them, the more you understand what they're going through, the better you can solve their problems. And it all has to be driven by solving their problems, not just creating a product based on what you and your friends dream up in the lab.
Yeah, quick iterations is also something I try to do when designing softwares, when doing prototypes, also fail fast, fail quickly. And well, you certainly gave me a lot to think about tonight. Yeah. I need to revisit my plan to, conquer the world, take over the world.
Right. I mean, and this is not a new thing. The discussion about being technology driven versus market driven has been around
Yeah.
for decades. This is really just a framework for being more customer driven. But you still need the technology. Let's not minimize the importance of that. When you have brilliant engineers who can create something new, that gives your company the ability to solve new customers or solve new problems or improve the quality or the effectiveness or reduce the cost of existing solutions. So you don't have to solve a new problem. Maybe you can just come up with a better solution to an old problem, reduce the cost of the solution, increase the effectiveness, increase the efficiency. Anything that adds value to the customer is a potential business.
All right, man. You sold it. I'm on board.
Okay.
Whatever. Actually, I will be in California in a couple of weeks at the GTC conference in San Jose, which is
Well,
probably
that's the other end of California, but
a bit.
I'm only a 50-minute flight away or a few hours on the road.
Yeah, this time it will be a quick trip. I will come for the conference. Actually, yeah, very uncomfortable flights, but yeah, maybe next time.
Okay. Well, and in between, we still have video conferencing.
We still have video conference, not yours,
Yeah.
but still. And hopefully next time it will be a bit easier.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's been amazing. It's been really good to see you again after a couple of years, and also hear from you about how common sense can bring us very good, can be marketing effective, and also partnerships can accelerate startups and can give us solutions to problems in a way that, I guess it's not always easy to find a partnership, right? Right now they're probably out there, 50,000 startups doing or trying to do AI, and I don't like to be in their shoes, right? But yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but see, the problem is you shouldn't be a startup doing AI. You should be a startup that's using AI to solve customer problems. And you've got to identify who are the customers and what are the problems they have, and then apply the AI to that. Don't just say, we're going to be an AI company.
Yeah, but you know what is the problem? At least in my very small and little experience, is that you have funds, you have money. And people that put money right now, they want to put their money in something AI related, right? So you have a lot of this VC money or funds money, whatever, and they want to invest in AI. And you talk to this company, right? And companies, and not everybody really does AI, right? It's like it's a stretch, but anyway, it's this time. We'll see how it goes, and. So I would love you to have you again on the podcast, maybe in 6 months, to cover more of the business side, to bring us more news from California. And well, for now, thank you very much. It's been a blast. I really love this.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to do it again when you're ready.
Thank you, man. You have a very good day. Talk soon.
Thank you. You too. And it was wonderful catching up.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.